Hello everyone, my name is Stephanie and I am here to talk about Aiden's IEP meeting. At the meeting here we have Aiden's mom and dad, Molly and Shane. We also have our administrative designee, Sherry. We have the occupational therapist, Shannon, and communication for speech and language is Miss Kenda. So to begin the meeting, I would just like to have all team members go ahead and sign in, including the parents can sign up at the top there. And then while the parents are also signing, this is a copy of your procedural safeguards. So this talks about your parents as a right, your right as a parent with a child in special education, and you can always read through it. If you have any questions, please let us know. And then if you'll just sign on that top line right there, that just states that you did receive the procedural safeguards. So I think everybody here is familiar with each other from the evaluation process and the previous IEP meeting for Aiden. So we will go ahead and get started. And the purpose of our IEP team meeting today is to discuss the progress that Aiden has been making towards his current IEP goals and objectives, to discuss the strengths that both parents are seeing as well as us as teachers in the classroom setting, and then help each other develop a new individualized education plan with new goals and objectives for Aiden that will carry him through for another school year. So to start, I'll kind of leave it up to the parents, Shane and Molly, if you guys have any concerns that you want to discuss first, as well as where you see Aiden's strengths are, both at home and in the school setting, and any other things that you want to communicate to begin. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So what I'm hearing you say is that Aiden is a happy boy. He's positive. He enjoys playing with trains and puzzles. And that your biggest concern right now is regarding Aiden's lack of communication, ability to effectively verbalize his wants and needs, both to peers, adults, and as well you as parents at home. But you are seeing an increase in his use of play skills and interest in playing with a variety of toys, as well as a few common gestures and some learned phrases that Aiden has been using as well, to get some of his wants and needs met more at home. And we can talk with his general education teacher, Tanya, as well, to see how that progress is coming along in the classroom setting as well. Wonderful. Well, we will go ahead and just get started. If you take a look at the draft of the IEP, we'll just start by kind of talking about some of those social skills. Some of those things are things that we've been seeing Aiden do in the classroom in relation to communication with peers, during playtime, during table work time, and some of those things. And so currently some of the social skills that Aiden is demonstrating are more emerging play skills. So being able to respond to a peer appropriately, joining an activity with peers, whether that's at the table or even on the rug. Some of those social skills, Aiden seems to be more motivated by sensory and movement experiences. We all know that Aiden loves to jump, and so that's something that he will respond to and ask other peers to join him in doing. Most oftentimes he'll just say jump, jump, or more jump. So working on some of those key language skills to ask peers to come and socialize. And then right now Aiden isn't necessarily motivated by social engagement with peers, but he is beginning to notice more of those actions that are happening around him and enjoys being in the company of others. He's demonstrating more parallel play skills right now, so he's pulling out toys and sitting next to a peer and playing with the same toys, but there's not a lot of verbalization or communication that goes back and forth between peers, as well as limited interaction, even with the same toys with peers as well. Aiden usually just likes to sit for 1 or 2 minutes and play with one particular activity, and then he'll quickly move on to another one. So that short attention span is kind of hindering his ability to have social interactions with peers at that time. And is there anything else that anybody wants to add about that social communication piece? Okay, next we will look at Aiden's overall communication in the classroom. And so currently Aiden is demonstrating skills that are between 12 and 18 months of age. He's really working on producing some of those single word utterances, such as please, or more, or mine, or stop. But it's not necessarily spontaneous yet. He's using it more after a model has been given for him. He is imitating sounds and some words that others are using, and uses about 10 to 15 words and gestures consistently throughout his day. He will greet peers and teachers by saying hello or hi. He will say goodbye when other peers or adults initiate that conversation. He does have difficulty with his understanding and use of that nonverbal communication, and he is able to participate in many routine activities. He does like to have things structured. He likes to know what the routine is that's coming next, and once in that routine, Aiden does a really nice job on being able to follow through with those directions. There's some spontaneous vocalizations that are being more directed towards others during that playtime, and other times where social communication would be appropriate. So that's been a really great progression to see Aiden be making. And just being able to also use some of those spontaneous gestures and signs to communicate more with peers and teachers is kind of where we're moving in that direction, I think. Next, we'll talk about Aiden's motor skills. So this is an area where Aiden really is doing a wonderful job, is with those motor skills. Things such as being able to run and walk upstairs. He really enjoys jumping. He's able to use a pincer grasp with his thumb and his pointer finger, so some of those more fine motor movements. He is sometimes imitating lines or circle scribbles, but not consistently yet. He is able to use a crayon and markers for those writing tasks. He enjoys taking apart puzzles and putting them back together and using little pegboards. He is able to find things that are hidden and oh, I'm sorry, I lost my thought. So he's able to find some things that are hidden, so more of those, that visual skills. And he is able to recognize shapes and then sometimes being able to follow them with some hand-over-hand support. So we're really working on some of those fine motor skills, but those gross motor skills, running, jumping, being able to kick a ball, throwing a ball, catching a ball, Aiden is doing marvelous at, which is good because he does seek out some of those gross motor movements when he needs breaks from the classroom setting. Kind of on that note of breaks, we'll look at the sensory motor skills. As we know, Aiden's sensory processing skills do appear to be different between the home and the school setting, which is very common for students. Some of those problems with that social participation and being around more people, peers, and noise in the classroom is very different than the quiet setting of just him and mom and dad at home. And both at home and at school sounds like, from what parents had described in the beginning, that he is continuing to struggle with some of that visual and auditory processing, as well as those body awareness skills. So it's always good for us to remember in the classroom to have less is more for Aiden. He gets easily distracted by too many visuals and if the noise level gets too loud, applying headphones and different things like that seem to really be supporting Aiden. And as we all are kind of aware with Aiden, some of those concerns kind of continue to lie in those areas of communication, social communication for that matter, and then as well as some of those behaviors. He's able to follow a structure and routine, but he does have a harder time when things don't go his way, and adapting to some unusual sensory needs, and demonstrating that need for repetitive behaviors is also something that we're working on with flexibility for Aiden. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add, or any questions about kind of where Aiden is currently at in the classroom setting? Yeah, that's a great question. So when we're looking at some of those in classroom occupational therapy needs for Aiden, many of the things that Shannon has been working on is that correct pencil grasp, making sure that he's really using those pincher fingers, as well as currently just working on some pre-writing shapes. So big lines, the plus sign, as well as just being able to imitate drawing a circle around and around, and then working on some lines that are up and down. So great question, and those are some of those things that can be worked on at home, which will support him in the school setting as well. Okay, yeah, and when we're talking about Aiden's communication, that kind of leads us into goal number 1 for him. So that first goal, kind of an idea is what we're looking at is to just increase his overall communication. So, and being able to communicate his basic wants and needs by increasing his vocabulary. Objectives would be looking like when prompted or when cued, that Aiden will look at the person he is talking to. Supporting Aiden and being able to ask for help when it's a naturally occurring opportunity. So if he's having a hard time getting his coat zipped, that's something that occurs naturally in the classroom. If he needs help working on an activity, or he needs help getting a toy back, something along those lines where he could just say help please, or just a simple one-word phrase of help is kind of where we're moving at right now. The third objective we were looking at just being able to spontaneously use single words to request things throughout the day, and then specifically with a teacher, and then specifically at snack time. So just helping get some of those needs met in those areas. Does that kind of help? Okay, yeah, I think those focus on those things that you were talking about, Molly, using more words and requesting and being able to get his needs met. So yeah, wonderful, great questions. The second goal is just looking at functional skills in the classroom. So moving and supporting Aiden from needing a high level requirement of support to make it through transitions and through daily self-help tasks, supporting Aiden and becoming more independent in those things. So being able to use a visual schedule, first in the whole classroom setting, and then working on being taught to use a visual schedule on his own, taking pictures off and putting them on the all done side, looking forward to what's coming next to help him support himself through those transitions, as well as supporting Aiden in helping himself be more independent in completing those arrival and departure times. So something that naturally occurs in the environment every time that Aiden comes to school and before he leaves every day, taking off his coat. Now with winter coming, taking his shoes off, or his boots off and putting his shoes on, taking his folder out and putting it in the classroom. Those few steps and those few self-help skills will really support him in becoming more independent in a lot of those skills. Yeah, and some of those things, zipping, buttoning, snapping, are all things that Shannon, the occupational therapist, will work on Thursdays when she's in the classroom, as well as at some of the center time on Tuesdays, we focus on more of those fine motor tasks. Goal number 3 is just looking at those social interactions, so supporting Aiden in socializing with peers in the classroom setting. So currently Aiden kind of tends to isolate himself socially, utilizing that parallel play or waiting for an adult to come and interact with him first. We want to move Aiden into more of an ability to increase independence and attend and engage in some of the activities that are going on around him. So just being able to be provided with reinforcements while being engaged in an activity, as well as supporting Aiden in intentional play experiences with adults, as well as peers in the classroom setting with adult support. So providing some of those cues like please share or that's mine, to support some of those pivotal strategies in the classroom setting. And then also looking at free playtime activities, that Aiden would remain in the same area for up to 5 minutes with 2 other peers to begin with. In the long term, we would like to see him staying in one activity for 10 minutes with other peers present. So just supporting him in continuing to be engaged in the activity, and then engaging with peers as well. The 4th objective is just being able to attend during group activities, circle time activities, table activities, with adult support. And then goal number 4 kind of reverts back to some of those sensory needs and those fine motor skills that we were talking about. So just being able to support Aiden in positive engagement with different sensory tools as well as fine motor tasks, engaging with materials of various sensory properties. So being able to play in the sensory table, whether it's rice or Play-Doh, shaving cream, water, different activities like that to really help him work through some of those sensory needs. And then also supporting Aiden in being able to self-soothe and recover from a state of dysregulation, and supporting him in finding strategies that work best for him, whether that's to take a break or to go check his visual schedule, blow out his 10 candles, different things like that to help support that independence. Do parents or any of the service providers have any other things that they would like to add to the goals or objectives? Remember, this is always a draft, so we can always make changes as we go. Yeah, that's a good question. So some of these goals are written in terms of where we would like to see Aiden at the end of his 4-year-old, at the end of his 3-year-old school year, and then moving into that 4-year-old school year. So a lot of them are based off of the report card, which you've seen, as well as some of those learning targets and essential standards that we set as a district for all of our 3- and 4-year-olds. Keeping in mind that Aiden does have some of those special needs, which may require him to be scaled back in meeting some of those goals, but we really try and push all of our students to be working towards the general education standards. That's why we have some of those objectives in there to say, okay, he's able to make objective 1 and 2, but he's not quite fully meeting the goal. Where can we go from there as he continues through the program? Okay, wonderful. So next you'll just look, the next section just talks about state assessments. Currently, at this time, there are no state assessments that are required for 3- and 4-year-olds in our district. So there's no need for accommodations or modifications. Next you'll see is the service grid. So the first service you'll see are those early childhood special education minutes, which the frequency currently, and it'll stay the same, 5 times a week for 360 minutes per week. And then that 5 minutes of indirect just to talk with other service providers, and it's that self-contained autism classroom, and that'll just continue for 1 year until his new IEP. And then those speech and language services are 4 times a week for 15 minutes of direct work with Aiden. So that'll be when Miss Kenda comes into the classroom and really supports Aiden in those socializing skills with peers. Tell him please, or you can say hi, Stephanie, when you see your peer come into the classroom, or getting his wants and needs met. Help please, supporting some of that sign language of more, and a few of those different things in the classroom setting. Aiden currently doesn't need a child-specific paraprofessional in the classroom. For assistive technology, Aiden does have access to some of that adaptive equipment and technologies as his general ed peers. A visual schedule is available, a visual timer for better transitions and support in following the routine and expectations of the classroom. I think that's really about it for that assistive technology. The special transportation. So Aiden does ride the bus to and from school. Is that going to continue? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So the school district will still pay for the busing to and from school every day. And just as a note, it's always just nice to make sure that when Aiden's on the bus, that he's sitting in the front of the bus and that he's sitting in one of the buckles that has the harness on, due to his small stature and some of that limited communication. We want to make sure that he's safe in his seat, and then when the bus driver does hand off to parent or whomever is at the house, that they make sure that they can physically eye-to-eye contact, seeing the parent either coming out the door or standing in the door, and making sure that Aiden does get all the way into the house. We don't need an interpreter for delivery of services. And right now we have extended school year as no. We'll see how Aiden is doing at the end of the year. And we can always revisit that. That's a simple change that we can always make if we think that extended school year is necessary. Last is looking at that least restrictive environment. So that's just talking about why Aiden is in the self-contained autism classroom. So we're just, stating that due to Aiden's significant delays in that social communication, that the team felt that his needs would best be met in a small center-based classroom with an environment that's designed to support the students with social communication needs. And then as Aiden gains those new skills throughout the IEP, the appropriateness of his placement will be discussed and be continued to be assessed, and alternate placements may be brought up as that communication grows. So Aiden will continue to attend the West Hills classroom 5 days per week for 6 hours per day. And during that time, the speech and language services will be provided inside the classroom for him, and then sensory motor support will also be provided while Shannon's in the classroom. Alrighty, so I know that was a lot of information, but this is just a draft, and so with that, this is a copy of the prior written notice, which just discusses everything that we discussed today, the changes that we'll be making to the IEP, and that we talked about new goals and objectives, and then continuing on with those communication services and sensory motor support when needed. This will be sent out to you with the new IEP, and you can read it all over. If you do consent to the new IEP, the new objectives, the information in the IEP, you can just sign and mark the consent box and send it back, and then his new IEP will start. Yeah, we do. We really look forward to having Aiden in the classroom setting, and we're really excited to see that progress in using that communication as well.